He said Trey Lance.
Are you kidding me?
Who said that? Sal Palatino?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Who would you rather have?
Oof.
I'll take both. I'll take both.
I don't know.
I'll take both wasn't a choice.
Yeah, I don't
It's one or the
know.
other.
I don't know. I get. Bryce has had 20 stars. I don't even know. Poor Bryce. I don't even know.
Nothing around him. Nothing around him. Well, his parents did hit at last year. Get my son out of there.
Yeah.
Halfway through the year.
Oh, I don't blame him. Mark this one for dismissal of the year. All right, we've reached the point. Yesterday was the point for me. Okay, and I felt like I had been there before, but no, it was yesterday.
Oh boy.
Current athlete podcasts. I'm out on them. I'm completely out on them. All right. And here's the deal. For every Draymond Green one that has some good content, there are 75 cruddy ones. And yesterday, it looked like Deebo and Ayuk, who were doing the Bleacher Report one. What's it called? What is it?
Catching Deebo or something like that.
I don't even know what it is.
Conversation.
It may have been the
Deebo
worst
Samuel.
athlete podcast I watched. But it's their first time, so I don't want to kill them.
Bonte, it should be their last time. Look, the reality is this. It's very simple. I understand people want to monetize their value off the football field. I get all of that. But not everybody needs to have a podcast. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, the saturation point was when, Chelsea Clinton was advertising podcasts on other podcasts I was listening to. It was like, who wants a Chelsea Clinton podcast? But the athletes, guys, I love you. I love you all. Like, you're great players. Unless you are actually willing to be an active participant, why are you doing this? Like, it looked like Brandon Ayuk. First off, he looks uncomfortable in front of most cameras. I don't think that he likes talking in front of a lot of cameras. Just the feeling that I get. And then, like, Deebo, guys, you're in season. You're not going to say anything. You're not doing that. And now I get it. I'm sure Bleacher Report, there's some sort of a financial agreement. I'm not knocking you on all that. But enough is enough. Whether it's the Pat Beverly one, whether it's, I know Curry's got a new one out. There's just too many. There's too many podcasts.
Well,
I'm podcasted out.
You know what it is? You know what it's
much.
called? Mully said this a few years ago.
I'm out.
Mully said this a few years ago, and I kind of stole it. And it's a disease. It's called podcastitis. Podcastitis. And there's no cure for it because everybody's got a podcast. Everybody. And not everybody's going to get rich off these podcasts. Now, the Kelsey podcast is good. I like that podcast.
Sure.
I'm enjoying Andre Ward interviewing boxers and promoters. I enjoy that podcast. At times, I enjoy All the Smoke. At times, I enjoy KG and Paul Pierce. So there's some good podcasts. You take them in doses, but not everybody should do it. The Deebo Ayuk situation yesterday was just, it wasn't off to a great start. I'll still watch. I'll still listen because maybe they will open up. And look, it's not easy. And they're learning right now. It's like, boy, I'm sure they're going to get some critiques from the bosses and producers. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to present ourselves. We got to speak more. We got to be more long-winded, because who's the girl who was hosting it? What was her name? Did we know the name? No, we don't know who was hosting it.
Well, I feel bad for her because she was trying to elicit a response that would create a conversation, and both guys seem so disinterested.
Yeah.
And this is the part of being in the entertainment part of the world is that you can't have off days. You and I know this. Like, there are some days where we're like, the episode wasn't as good as we wanted it to be, and it like wears on you. You have to be able to just entertain. That's the whole point why people show up for it.
Yeah, Liv Moods was a girl who was hosting it. Now, 510's right. 510's right. Jeff Teague podcast, I like that podcast.
Okay.
There's a lot of athlete podcasts I do like, and everybody's right or well within their right to do podcasts. It just doesn't mean that everybody's going to be good at podcasts.
Well, that's where I'm coming at.
That's what it is.
And I'm at the point now where I feel like this show has a decision to make. Either we're playing everybody's stuff when it comes to the podcast, or we're playing nobody's stuff. Because there's just so much out there. There's so much out there to sift through. It's tough, man.
It's not an either or. It's not an either or type of deal. We're going to play stuff from podcast. We just played stuff from, was that Rich Eis's podcast? It was Kay Adams' podcast.
He has an actual broadcast show.
Yeah, he does. But Kay Adams, we played that. We play that all the time. I got no problem playing stuff off a podcast.
Did the Draymond stuff hit you as hard as the season wore on?
No, not really. I mean, because there's a lot there. And it's, you get fatigued at times, but we still listen. I still listen. He's a member of the Golden State Warriors. It's kind of our job to listen to see what he says.
Do you follow the whole podcast? Or do you just follow the clips that you see online?
No, I follow the podcast. I subscribe to all the podcasts.
And you'll listen to the whole thing?
Sometimes I don't. But it gives me reminders, hey, somebody released a podcast. And if it's a Draymond Green show, sometimes I skim through it, but sometimes online beats me to it. And I'm like, all right, maybe I'll listen to this part. Because there's always something. If it's Warrior related, or if there's a Warrior, a Niner, a Giant, San Jose Shark, kind of gotta listen to it. You gotta figure out some content here. TK's podcast, I listen to that. Because he's always got good guests on there. I do. But not everybody should podcast. That was a terrible podcast. It was a terrible podcast episode. That sucked. But hopefully they get better because I don't want to crush them. I'm sure, because here's the deal. I try to take this perspective in everything. Deebo and Ayuk, the first episode wasn't good. I think we all agree. It was just like, eh. But I'm sure my first ever episode on 95.7 The Game, or my first ever podcast, whenever I did a podcast back in 2013, probably sucked. My first ever radio show in college at SF State probably sucked. They need reps. They need to get better. And so maybe they'll get better. Maybe they'll get better. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one before I crush them all and say, hey, stop podcasting, don't talk anymore. Because I do think athletes do provide an intriguing viewpoint that fans are not privy to, information that we're not privy to, what they go through on a daily basis. But podcasting is not for everybody.
That I agree with. And I'm not telling everybody to just shut up and don't do any of these things. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that understand your strong suits. For example, I'll raise my hand. I knew I wasn't going to make a great plumber. I knew right away. My entire family was plumbers. And I knew this isn't my strong suit. I'm not good when it comes to having a drill in my hand and a Phillips and a flathead. That's not who I am. Some would say I'm not good on a microphone, and that's their prerogative. They're fine to feel that way. I find it very difficult when you love these teams, okay, to sift through all of the podcasts to find a good one. It's really difficult for the listener out there. And so I get fatigued by the whole thing. It's like I feel the same way when I go onto Netflix or Max or any of this. There's so much stuff out there, and none of it is that I really want to watch.
Yeah, but it depends what you're looking for, right? Like Shannon Sharp's podcast. It's for him and Ocho Cinco. Funny as hell. I don't watch every one, but I know when I tune in, I'm going to be entertained, right? Draymond, for example. You brought up Draymond Green.
Shannon Sharp, I'm glad you bring him up. He's a great entertainer.
He's a great
and he's very likable.
I'll say this about Draymond. There's a lot of stuff I don't like on the podcast, but then there's a lot of stuff I learned about the game of basketball. So the guy does know his hoops, right? So I'm thinking damn, all right, that's interesting to know. So I'll give, and I told him this 3 years ago. I was like, yo, your podcast is, because we were playing a lot of his stuff 3 years ago, a lot of it. And I was like, sometimes you carry our show. Thanks for the content, man. He kind of chuckled. It's cool with that. But, there's other, like KG and Paul Pierce. I know what to expect with a podcast. They're going to be fools. They're going to be clowning. Sometimes I want to hear that. Jeff Teague's got crazy stories, and it's from a perspective of an NBA player who wasn't a said superstar. So it's kind of interesting to hear him talk about, man, when I was guarding LeBron, man, we couldn't beat them, and boy, I just sat down, or when he's guarding Curry in Tokyo, he's like, man, I'm playing hard, and Curry's out there embarrassing me, man. I'm like, hell nah. We in Japan, dog. You know what I'm saying? So it depends what you're looking for. Not every podcast is for everybody, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Well, that I agree with. I'm just saying that there's so many of them. I just think that the hit rate, in and outside of sports, there's so many of them. It's impossible to sift through them, number one. And number two, it just feels like too many are being done half-ass wise. I look at Micah Parsons. Micah, dude, stop, dude. Just stop. You're doing more of a harm to yourself. You're a great player.
Is he? Yeah. Why? What kind of harm is he doing?
Chirping all the time. No one wants to hear it.
Yeah, but what kind of harm is he doing to himself? I disagree with that. He's talking, and we just probably think he's annoying, but
that's what I'm saying.
He's going to get every dollar on the football field.
Well, that's not.
He's still going to get endorsements.
He's going to get that no matter what.
He still was out there with C.J. Stroud traveling the world last offseason, on the Bleacher Report during the draft. I don't think he's doing any harm. If you don't, I disagree with that.
I think his product isn't good. I've watched it. It's not good. The athlete podcast thing, I feel we reached a saturation point. It reminds me of when we got to cut the cord. We got to have 1 million streaming apps. And now you open it up every single night as a family and you're like, there's nothing to watch.
But honestly though, with podcasts, I do respect podcasts in this sense.
That's how I came up.
Exactly. For some people who aren't fortunate enough to broadcast at a station like this or the station down the hall, you got a podcast and you got to get your broadcasting chops and you got to learn how to speak and have a cadence to it. So podcasts helped me out. So I'm, people want a podcast, but we all have a choice in life to whether or not we want to listen to it. Real quick, Matt.